I'm delighted to welcome our final speaker this afternoon. I'd like to welcome Amanda Slevin, who is Director of the Centre for Sustainability, Equality and Climate Action in Queen's in Belfast. And you're going to speak to us today, I think, bringing it back down to the community level, Amanda. So looking forward to hearing your talk.
Thanks very much. Delighted to be here today and delighted to follow both the fantastic presentations by Helen and Jenny. My talk's going to build on those, as Anne has pointed out. And so I'll begin by explaining where I'm coming from and some of the topics I'm going to discuss. I'm an environmental sociologist. I am an educator and a community activist. So over 20 years experience of working in and with communities, practically and academically. So I focus on how we humans interact with our environment and with each other living species. And I examine society-environment interactions across multiple levels of society, from the micro levels of individuals, meso levels of communities, and macro levels of nation-states within our globalized world. So today I'm going to talk about some socio-ecological inequalities and associated imperatives multi-level action, emphasising the importance of community climate action for sustainability transitions, building on the great talks we just heard. In a recent report on the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals, the UN emphasised that we are living through a triple planetary emergency of climate change, biodiversity loss and pollution, which pose existential threats to human health, as we've just heard, and non-human species. Jenny outlined various associated impacts and inequalities, and it's arguable that non-human species face threats of equal or even greater magnitude. For example, human activities since around 1500 have caused the extinction of approximately 680 vertebrate species. Around 1 million species, or a quarter of all animal and plant species, face extinction, many within decades, unless multi-level action is taken to tackle climate change and reduce the intensity of biodiversity loss. And these anthropogenic or human-caused planetary crises accelerate, so do related socioeconomic, ecological and political risks and impacts, deepening socioecological and health inequalities. Of course, Ireland is not immune to climate risks and impacts, as Jenny has pointed out, and is outlined in research by the EPA and among others, and evidence through recent flooding events and extreme weather events we've seen in recent years. The UK's Climate Change Risk Assessment Evidence Report emphasises that climate risks affect people differently, depending on their social, economic and cultural environment. Low-income households are most susceptible and are likely to have lower capacity and resources to adapt to climate breakdown. As illustrated in these maps of deprivation, large sections of our population on both sides of the border already experience deprivation and are likely to be worse affected by climate breakdown. Take, for example, Northern Ireland, where over 27% of properties most at risk of flooding are in deprived areas. However, by undertaking ambitious, inclusive climate mitigation, adaptation and resilience actions, we can move towards an actually sustainable future for all. As the IPCC's 2018 report outlined, limiting global warming to 1.5 degrees Celsius, a goal of the Paris Agreement, compared to 2 degrees Celsius, could reduce the number of people both exposed to climate-related risks and susceptible to poverty by several 100 million by 2050. So if the scientific consensus on the climate emergency or global and local inequalities weren't sufficient drivers of action on their own, a suite of global, European and national policies and legislation mandate cross-cutting multi-level climate action. These imperatives include the United Nations Framework Convention on Climate Change, the UNFCCC, the UN's Sustainable Development Goals, the European Climate Law, European Green New Deal, and national climate legislation on both sides of our border. Yet legal and policy imperatives alone cannot resolve the triple planetary emergency. As O'Brien pointed out, climate change is a scientific problem. It's an environmental problem, a human problem, an economic problem, a political problem, and a spiritual problem. Climate change, and indeed climate actions, cannot be understood fully from one vantage point. The knowledge, skills and expertise from across a wide range of disciplinary backgrounds are required for the complex multi-level solutions that are required, and that can bring everybody with us on the journey to a healthy, fairer and more sustainable futures. I cannot emphasise enough that climate action cannot be something that is done to communities. Successful climate action has to happen in and with communities. I think Helen illustrated that really well in her talk about the success of Sláinte Care. We have to work in and through communities and with communities. And it is only through genuine, voluntary and active participation in decision-making and diverse actions that we can transform our socio-ecological world. And therein lies key challenges for how transformative change is envisaged and how associated policies are designed and implemented. A prevailing perspective, as we're seeing in various climate policies, holds that if people receive sufficient information or experience carrot and stick mechanisms, whether it's grants to award good choices or carbon taxes to influence things like fossil fuel consumption, people will change their behaviour and embark on new pathways. However, regressive taxation measures or other forms of what Einstein described as manipulation can deepen inequalities and, contrary to the original intention, contribute to resistance to decisions, to actions necessary for a healthy, sustainable future. People have to be involved in decisions and actions affecting their lives, health and well-being. And Einstein outlined in her seminal work how co-creating spaces for such citizen participation means redistributing power to enable everyone to be deliberately included in the future and in their future. Participatory approaches beyond tokenistic consultations are essential. As a core locus of micro and meso level relationships and human activities, community is crucial to bring people together for a sustainable future. Yet we know that few terms are associated with such a diverse range of meanings and applications as community. For some, community encapsulates feelings of attachment and deep connection with others. Yet the idea of community is often challenged in Western academic literature. Despite its warm and comforting ring, which smooths the rough edges of our society, Terry Robson argued that the concept of community has become vague, inexact, and a description of collective human activity without careful regard for the circumstance or context. Only have to look at Northern Ireland, where community is used frequently to distinguish one ethno-nationalist group from the other, to see the multiplicity of interpretations that exist, not all of which are conducive to positive social change. A dominant binary assessment of community implies that Northern Ireland comprises two communities, Catholic and Protestant. Yet that disregards the complexity of human relationships and interactions that transcend ethno-nationalist affiliations. And we can see that in Northern Ireland, there's dichotomous interpretation of community can pit people against each other. And that is not helpful for climate action and for sustainability. While affiliation to a particular nation state can be for some a core component of individual identity, developing a community of communities for climate action requires an approach that transcends distinctions, which separate us from them. Them could be people living down the road who feel affiliated to a particular nation state, or them could be understood as their sisters and brothers in the global south who suffer the worst consequences of climate breakdown, which, as Jenny has highlighted, is primarily driven by the actions of us in the global north. Genuine sustainability involves a dynamic interplay of people, peace, planet and place, enabling diverse and divided people to come together to co-create a better future. Taken from that perspective, we can see community as a complex system of interrelationships woven across social difference, diverse histories and cultures, and determined in the present by political and social trends. Such a pluralist perspective recognises that although people may have differing ethno-nationalist beliefs, they are only one element of human identities, which are shaped in myriad ways. A respect for what makes us different can be entwined with what we hold in common, our shared planet, and the reality that our species can only survive and thrive through connections and collaborations manifest in inclusive approaches to community building, development, and cohesion. Across the island of Ireland, the term cross-community has come to describe collaboration of people with differing affiliations along political or religious lines. However, with inclusive, collective efforts to advance multi-level climate action, we can affect change across community, bringing together people from all walks of life to co-develop a healthier, more sustainable and genuinely peaceful society. After all, Climate Breakdown doesn't care if we're Catholic, Protestant or atheist, and strong links exist between peace and sustainability within our climate and within our communities and on our planet. So building on Lesbeth's definition of community, I've previously articulated community climate action as an inclusive, specific approach to climate action, collective action, premised upon collaborating around what we hold in common as human beings, namely our shared planet, and a healthy future being contingent on our collective action now. We are living in a climate emergency, and we have to act like it. Wilmot's categorization of three main types of community is a useful basis for us to understand different types of community climate action in practice. In the first category of locality or territory, we can see people coming together at a local level to take action. Through co-developing community energy projects, such as those developed by the Drumlin Energy Cooperative, or within increasing community gardens and biodiversity initiatives that we see across the country. And in doing so, people are taking control of the means of production in important domains, for example, food and energy, forming bottom-up approaches to shared ownership and co-production, which culminates in greater collective local benefits for community members. The second category of community, of commonality of interest or interest group, might apply to the origins of the wonderful Clough-Jordan eco-village, in which people with shared interests consciously came together to co-create a sustainable community, which now also encompasses a geographical area. As the first eco-village on the island of Ireland, Clough-Jordan is an example of how people can co-develop an actually sustainable community, underpinned by shared values, collective decision-making, renewable energies, food production and other components necessary for sustainable living within our planetary boundaries. And the third group of community is a group composed of those sharing a common condition or a problem, which fits with us generally as a global human species facing existential crises of our own making, which necessitates transformative action. We are all part of the problem, but we can all be part of the solution. And as demonstrated in our efforts within Climate Coalition Northern Ireland, where we co-developed a community of communities for climate action that culminated in Northern Ireland's first Climate Change Act being passed last year. The active involvement of people from all spheres of society is essential for lasting socio-ecological change. And these forms of community exemplify how different communities can co-create new ways of connecting, collaborating and being that are sustainable, while also serving to challenge the socio-ecologically destructive status quo. It is arguable that there would be no climate legislation in Northern Ireland, and Jenny referred to some of the issues around DAERA and government departments that stopped effective climate action for over a decade. And there would be no legislation and certainly no commitment to just transition if it hadn't been for diverse groups like Climate Coalition Northern Ireland forming a community of communities for climate action. And because of our collaborative efforts, which included working with cross-party, cross-community MLAs, independent legal experts, and diverse stakeholders from a wide range of communities, commitment to just transition has become enshrined within the NI's Climate Change Act. The Just Transition principle seeks a fair transition, including climate resilient and sustainable jobs, and support for our most vulnerable. It also seeks to reduce with a view to eliminating poverty, inequality, social deprivation, and gender inequalities. And in doing so, attention has been centred on the necessity of tackling socio-ecological injustices in order to move towards a sustainable future. Another example of community-level collaboration for multi-level transformation is Groundswell, which some of you might have heard of. Groundswell is an interdisciplinary consortium involving researchers, policy implementers and communities, which seeks to transform systems so that urban green and blue spaces are co-planned, co-developed, co-implemented, co-maintained and co-evaluated. Groundswell is led by my colleague Professor Ruth Hunter in Queen's University Belfast, Professor Ruth Jepson in University of Edinburgh, and Professor Sarah Rogers in the University of Liverpool, in partnership with Cranfield University, University of Exeter, University of Glasgow, University of Lancaster and Liverpool John Moores University. Groundswell is primarily funded by the UK Prevention Research Partnership and so far has 49 partners from civil society organisations industry, local authorities and government. Our partners include local authorities in Belfast, Edinburgh and Liverpool City, the Public Health Agencies of Scotland and Northern Ireland, Belfast Healthy Cities, the Scottish Government, Edinburgh Health and Social Care Partnership and the HSE Research and Development Office in Northern Ireland. Groundswell conducts innovative research using a whole systems approach to urban green and blue spaces, aiming to improve population health and reduce inequalities. By working together, the solutions we meet will meet the needs of our communities, implementers, policymakers and researchers. So our consortium draws on a wide range of expertise from every discipline that has a shared interest in tackling inequality and moving towards sustainability. And our research primarily takes place in 3 hubs: Belfast, Edinburgh and Liverpool. Each of these studies have sufficient similarities, such as the large and diverse low-income communities, but also distinct features such as geography and culture, making them collectively an ideal laboratory. Each study has policies and programmes in place to improve urban green and blue spaces, but there's much room for improvement. A key case study within Groundswell is the Conswater Community Greensway, in which we work closely with Eastside Partnership, a local charity leading the regeneration of East Belfast. The award-winning Conswater Community Greenway, developed by Eastside Partnership and delivered by Belfast City Council, is a £40 million investment focused on making East Belfast a better place to live. The Greenway involves a 9-kilometre linear park connecting green and blue spaces, 16 kilometres of foot and cycle paths, 26 new or improved bridges and crossings, and up to 5 kilometres of rivers cleaned. And a new focal point of the city is C.S. Lewis Square, located beside Eastside Partnership, and the overall Greenway is part of an integrated flood alleviation project. The Greenway has created a vibrant, attractive, safe and accessible parkland for leisure, recreation and community events and activities, which produce myriad physical and mental health benefits. So in terms of research in the associated public health benefits, a baseline study was conducted in 2010, then a follow-up study in 2017, and a third wave recently commenced as part of Groundswell. So I joined the Groundswell Consortium last September, and the Groundswell Belfast Hub now encompasses a new focus on climate action and sustainability as part of interventions to build positive peace and challenge sectarianism, which divides communities along ethno-nationalist lines. Implicit within Groundswell is focus on transcending divisions to aid communities to become healthier, more sustainable, and capable of working together to tackle socio-ecological inequalities. And so to conclude, transformative change across all domains of our world are required simultaneously to enable real sustainability and climate action. These changes have to encompass socioeconomic, ideological, scientific, technological, political, legal, cultural and environmental shifts. Moving towards a sustainable future necessitates transformed ways of being, thinking and living with each other within our communities, societies and our broader environments. We need inclusive, participative approaches to climate action that leave nobody behind. Those approaches have to start in and with communities as a key locus of relationships and social organisation. As the very short examples of community climate action demonstrate, we can co-create new communities and build on existing communities to critically imagine and co-create pathways for a sustainable future for all who share our planet. In doing so, we have opportunities to achieve a triple win of health, equity and environmental sustainability, moving towards positive peace, living sustainably together and within planetary boundaries as part of an interconnected web of diverse communities at local, national and international levels. Thank you for listening.